Every day, we're here for you. We get things off the ground, keeping you connected. We're here keeping you safe and secure. We keep things running smoothly and know the importance of giving back. Every day, we're here. ARA. Here for you. Here for good.
Welcome to Season 7 of Everyday Greatness, and thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Barnaby Howarth. We're coming to you from Sydney Swans HQ in Moore Park. And before I start, I need to warn you all about something that could make this entire season look really awkward. I suffered some pretty severe brain damage when I had a stroke when I was 25. I'm now a person with disability, and one of the most outwardly obvious impacts of that is that I've almost entirely lost my short-term memory. So I have a huge over-reliance on my notes and refer to my laptop a lot more than I probably should. And every now and then I might freeze like a deer in the headlights. If that happens, just talk amongst yourselves for a second till I find where I am. We'll carry on and she'll be apples. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Gadigal and Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation. I want to pay my respects to elders, past, present and emerging. One of the proudest things I can say about myself is that I am Australian. So this acknowledgement comes straight from my heart, and I want to sincerely thank our Indigenous brothers and sisters for sharing their land with us. Right, let's get this show on the road. The first 6 seasons of Everyday Greatness has brought an intangible, immeasurable, feel-good factor back to the world. So it's quite fitting that Season 7 of Everyday Greatness is going to be co-hosted by the Sydney Swans, a professional Australian rules football club that's been bringing its own feel-good factor to the world for over 150 years. This season we'll be asking, is the real you good enough? One of the key pillars of the infamous Bloods culture at the Sydney Swans is to let everybody at this club know that the strength and resilience they need to deal with any challenge in their life is inside them. It's internal. There is no external magic bullet or mystical superpower. And this year, we want to help you find your internal strength and resilience and help you find your feel-good factor and help you realise that everything you need to be the person you want to be is inside you right now. I'm going to be talking to one of the most authoritative voices of what it means to be a Blood, former player and now now stoppage coach at the Sydney Swans, Ben Matthews. Ben's 198-game AFL career began when he was drafted to the Swans in 1995, and his career straddled the implementation of the Bloods culture in 2003. Ben played in that infamous Premiership in 2005 and is now an assistant coach after retiring in 2008. So I'd like to welcome Ben Matthews to Everyday Greatness. Ben, welcome and thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Barnaby.
So let me ask you about the Bloods culture first up. So the Bloods culture is talked about a lot in terms of the success of this football club, but can you explain in layman's terms what the Bloods culture actually is to non-football or Swans fans?
Yeah, look, a lot's been written about the Bloods culture, but I suppose in layman's terms it's just being a good person a majority of the time that you exist within the 4 walls of the football club, but also outside, I suppose, in the community. We're really strong on representing our football club, our brand as such, in the community. So the Bloods culture was really around being a really good person, first and foremost, and then culturally how you exist within the football club and what you do for the football club and do for your teammates as well. And thankfully, it started a long time ago, over 20 years ago. The I suppose the beginnings of it around late 2002, 2003, and to this day, the players and the football club still exist with that Bloods culture. It's been really positive to see.
And are you one of those old school blokes who drums it into all the new players when they arrive at the club?
I used to be a bit of an old schooler, but I think I've changed my ways a little bit, mate. Look, really proud of the boys, and you know, I think they're finding their own identity within the Bloods culture now. It's changed. Some of the words we created and it existed under, I suppose, were pretty hard hitting, and like I said, it was over 20 years ago, so society was a little bit different, standards and the way people I suppose, behaved not around the place, but just their personality types have changed over time. Young people are a little bit different. They're a little bit more exuberant, and they love the positivity. So I think now the young guys that come in and girls that come into our footy club are finding their own identity within the Bloods culture. Certainly more positive, certainly more, connected, and they celebrate wins along the journey. We always celebrated wins, but it's a big part of their existence now, and that connection area of the footy club. So across the board, I think the playing groups, men's and women's, and the footy club in general has really driven those attributes.
So you said that the Bloods culture is talked about a lot, and it is. And it's tied a lot to the success of this football club. But I want to ask you, when you brought in the Bloods culture in 2003, was it a tangible thing? Did you guys create something brand new that had never existed before? Or was it those seeds of small goodness that have been planted in this club for 150 years that just came to fruition?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I mean, there's certainly some really, really good seeds of... you think about, obviously, the struggles of the South Melbourne team, the Swans, when they were at South Melbourne, in their existence down at Lakeside Oval in Melbourne, that struggle, that hard-working nature of the football club, through to when they relocated into Sydney in the early 80s, and the drive that they had from quite a few people to make sure we didn't fold was that still shines through in our football club today, and we celebrate that, especially the past and the present and the I suppose the achievement of our football club. We're 150 years old this year, so it's an amazing achievement. So the seeds have always been sown throughout history. I suppose what we did in early 2003 was start really driving a player-led culture. We almost gave the reins to the playing group at the time. We set some values and then some standards and behaviours underneath those values that we wanted to live by. But we had some great mentors, and certainly through my career, I had Paul Kelly and the like that drove the standards, that hard-working nature that we were at South Melbourne through to the early days of the Swans, and then the player-led culture from probably 2003 with Stewie Maxfield and Kirky and Mickey O'Loughlin and a number of others, Leo and those guys, was really, really taken up and driven with great gusto, I suppose. And from there, it's been handed down the line, from that era, obviously when I played, to your Jared McVeighs and your Kieran Jacks and your Reg Grundys and these guys that have taken it on, and then Luke Parker and Joey Kennedy and the like have handed it on to Cal Mills and those guys. So it's long lasting now, but each generation has sort of brought their own flavour to it, and we celebrate that as well. They're doing a great job.
They certainly are, and as well it should be celebrated. Now I've just got to point out, you talked about Jared McVeigh and Kieran Jack, both Pennant Hills Demons players.
Oh,
Go
right,
D's.
yeah. They call it the football factory up at Pennant Hills, I'm
That's
I'm
the
told.
one that goes all right.
Yeah.
So you said you're not much of an old school, you don't ram the Bloods culture down new players' throats. Who's the most vocal player these days that really tries to reinforce the values that the Bloods culture instills?
I think we all do, to be quite honest. Certainly in the playing group, it's Cal Mills, it's Luke Parker, it's those guys, but they're handing it down to, Chad Warners and Errol Gouldens and Nick Blakey. So certainly we lean on our senior leaders. Dane Rampy's another one who's a senior leader and has been for a long, long time. So we lean on them. Within the coaching and the football club, certainly myself, Brett Kirk, Jared McVeigh, Eamon Buchanan are all past players within our coaching or welfare department. And you can't forget, John Longmire was an assistant coach when it all started in late 2002. So that's had a huge bearing because he really believes in the Bloods culture and has been an enormous motivating and driving factor of it as well. So we've been lucky. We've had great stability, not just in our playing group, but in our coaching group and welfare department. We've got past players that come back through the doors and really pass on their knowledge to our current playing groups. So it's a really special thing that everyone has great pride in, I suppose. And I don't think anyone rams it down their throat. We allow these players through their own journeys to, like I spoke about, add their own flavour to it. But underlining it is, subtly we drop hints and give advice, I suppose, of when the right time to really drive it is.
You talked about the changing face of the Bloods culture since 2003. The world's changed a lot. This club's changed a lot as well. How has the Bloods culture evolved with the addition of the women's program here?
Well, the girls have done a great job. Obviously, they're only 2 years into their existence at our football club. But to go from, having a really tough first season, putting a team together under really, really short notice, into their second season of playing finals and winning a final has been an enormous boost for our footy club, because they come in, they're fresh-faced, they're energetic. The girls just display an unbelievable amount of energy with their training, just with their personality and demeanour around the place. So they really drive that connection and excitement, certainly. And the other thing they've added, I suppose, is just, they want to prove themselves and achieve a really high level of performance. So that ability to go from no wins to a finals win motivates us as well. We certainly as a men's team want to emulate that and keep driving that high performance culture.
Very good, very good. Now let me ask you about you as a human being, Benny. You are an assistant, a stoppage coach at the Swans. Your job is almost defined by win-loss records. How do you find that balance though between striving to win every game you play while also instilling a totally intangible philosophy like the Bloods culture?
Yeah, it's a good question. We are defined. There's no hiding from the fact that we are not defined by our win-loss, but we are judged by our win-loss. I think what defines us more so is living every day as a if we're within the four walls and outside of it as a Sydney Swans person, and being a good person. That's I think where the Bloods culture starts and stops. And it started way back, when we. It's a funny thing, but we called it the no dickheads policy, and it's a very, very simple thing to say, but it's about being a good person and putting the club first, but being a good person outside of here. I actually think that's what defines the Sydney Swans more so than win-loss. The win-loss will come on the back of that, and it's a funny way to look at it, but if you just try to be defined by win-loss all the time, the emotional and mental roller coaster is big enough as a footballer. I think if you judge it on being a good person, that's a hard-working person, a good family person, a good person to people around you, and a helpful person to people around you, and that's more definitive, I think, and easier to exist in everyday life. And the flow-on of that is you'll carry those traits into your football. And I think our players are doing a terrific job, men's and women's, of, everyone makes mistakes and everyone has times where they just get something wrong. But if you live every day of trying to be a really good person, help the people around you, be hardworking, you'll be okay. So I think that's what probably defines us the most.
Ben Matthews, you're a humble country bloke. Was it Coral Rutherglen?
Yeah, it was. I went to Corowa High School, and I grew up about 15 minutes out of Corowa, a little place called Burridger. Hopeful Burridger was the local football club, who have since, unfortunately, collapsed. So, there's been a consolidation of leagues and footy clubs around the area. But I went to school in Corowa. I played for Corowa Rutherglen in the Ovens and Murray and the Murray Bushrangers. So that's a long time ago, Barnes. It's nearly 30 years ago I left Corowa, but that's where my roots are, my family's from, and still are there. So I love getting down to that area.
Well, as a humble country kid or country man now, that was one of the most powerful answers I've heard when you're talking about the desire to just be a good person first and the results on the footy field come after that. Yeah. That was incredible. I don't think you realise how philosophically astute that was, Benny.
It's hard to, and I know we all do get judged by our win-losses, but it's a hard life to live sometimes, and I think that's where we've probably got better as players and as coaches and as people. Is once upon a time we know we're judged by those win-losses in a football media sense. But we're much more than that. And I think our players probably see that more than anything, and I think they're doing a great job as ambassadors, as people.
Couldn't agree more. Now, I need to ask you on that line about the grand final a couple of years ago. The Swans players looked like startled young prey seeing their first predator on the field and got flogged by Geelong pretty soundly. But this year, the Swans are flying and they look like confident young men.
Yeah,
It must be a good feeling in the team at the moment.
Well, right now it's an amazing feeling. Some of those lessons are just so valuable. Now, you never want to turn up on grand final day and get beaten by that. We run into an outstanding football team in 2002 on grand final day. Geelong are an outstanding football club, to be quite honest, and deservedly won that game and won it well. Unfortunately, we didn't handle that moment, but the learnings are enormous. Were we just ahead of our time? Potentially. We also felt we could win that game as well going into it. So what we've taken away from that is the struggles of last year in 2023 were also just as valuable off that grand final loss. We struggled early in the season with injuries, but we found a way in the back end to play another final series. And that gave us our younger guys that are emerging, enormous belief, and they took that into pre-season. So what you're seeing at the moment is a byproduct of learnings over the last 2, 3, 4 years, an enormous amount of effort through pre-season and the shared experience of a young group of men that really want to achieve something at the moment. And they'll keep striving. There'll be little speed humps along the way. We're not naive enough to think that there won't be some little speed humps, but as long as we keep that hard-working nature and being a good person and helping a teammate as much as we possibly can, hopefully that stands us in good stead later in the year, because there's still a long, long way to go right now.
Very true. You don't win premierships in June.
No, unfortunately not. But look, we're excited about where the football club is at right now with I suppose the engagement of our fans, the people in our football club, to have 45,000 people, the last 2 or 3 games, the club's doing a terrific job and our team's doing a terrific job.
And Ben Matthews, you've just done a terrific job. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on Everyday Greatness.
Thanks for having me, Barnes.
Thank you to Ben Matthews for joining us on Everyday Greatness. Thank you to the Sydney Swans for hosting us so graciously at Swans HQ. Thank you to the ARA Group for being our major sponsor for the 7th year in a row. Thank you to Look Studio Australia for your technical expertise. Thanks to Facet Digital for your digital marketing services. And thank you all for watching. I hope you can join us next week, where I'll be having a chat to the Executive General Manager of AFLW at the Sydney Swans, Kate Marnie. Kate and I will be joined by Alana Woodward, current AFLW player at the Swans. We'll be chatting about the rise of women's sport around the world. We hope you can join us for that one. But in the meantime, if you'd like to find out more about this show, go to the Everyday Greatness page at www.barnabyhowarth.com. Or you can follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube or LinkedIn. And you can also watch us this season on Swans TV on YouTube. Thank you again, Ben, and thank you all for joining us.